The purpose of today's press briefing is for our Elections Directorate to update the nation on the ongoing voter registration blitz. However, before we get into that important update, a few remarks. Now, in the next few months, the citizens head to the polls to decide on our collective future. There have been many elections before, all of which have not quite brought the change we desire. However, in true Zimbabwean form, the citizens refuse to give up or lose hope. We've been overwhelmed by the hunger of people, young and old, of all creeds, tribes, and genders for change across all provinces, and their hunger for a Zimbabwe that works for the many and not the few. Since we announced our new movement on the 24th of January 2022, it's grown beyond all expectations. They thought they buried us. They didn't realize that we're proverbial seeds. And our change champion-in-chief advocate, Nelson Chamisa, recently laid out the Zimbabwe agenda for 2023, which is based on 5 pillars, as you all know. The first being that we're going to lead a citizens campaign and a broad-based volunteers program. This is going to see an unprecedented mass movement of citizens coming together like never seen before on the continent. And we've got an energetic team of volunteers, and we encourage all citizens to get involved in this campaign. It won't be an elite campaign, it will be a grassroots campaign. The second pillar is that we've revolutionized and changed our candidate selection process. We're going to have citizen representatives. Communities are going to select their own candidates by consensus. In true democratic fashion, we're going to give communities a voice in deciding who their representatives are. This is a truly democratic system that gives power back to communities whose voices have not been heard so strongly in the past. The third pillar of Agenda 2023 is the need for us to all secure and defend the vote. President Nelson Chamisa indicated that we're going to have polling agents at every single polling station across the length and breadth of Zimbabwe. He also indicated that we're looking at a number of about 44,000 polling stations, polling agents across the country. And this also requires all citizens to make sure that they participate in defending their votes so that we win the nation for change. The fourth pillar is around alternative policy formulation. We're going to have a new Great Zimbabwe blueprint that sets out our plan to govern the nation. The fifth pillar is around global advocacy for change, where we're going to be working with and lobbying SADC, the African Union, and the United Nations to ensure that we internationalize the struggle for a better Zimbabwe. So in line with this agenda, our next steps, obviously we've got the voter registration blitz that my colleague from the Elections Directorate is going to speak to just now. But after that, we're going to go straight into community candidate selection by consensus. And just to be clear, the communication as to when this will be rolled out will be made officially through our official channels. So make sure you tune in for that. We're going to ensure that the process is transparent and widely publicized so everybody can look forward to that. And if you do have an interest in standing, please look out for that announcement so that communities also step up. We want to ensure that in all streets, all communities, all villages, citizens have a voice in deciding who represents us as citizens in the upcoming government. The next step, obviously, is around proclamation. In terms of our electoral law, Mr. Mnangagwa is to proclaim the election date. Thereafter, the voters' roll will be closed. And after that, we'll have the nomination, the formal court nomination process of candidates. And then we're going to see our mass citizen campaign that President Nelson Chamisa spoke of in full swing. Now, our goal is to win hearts and minds. We've got a plan, as you'll hear at the launch of our new Great Zimbabwe Blueprint, to build new infrastructure through efficient stewardship of our resources and prudent fiscal management. You're going to be voting for an energy plan that includes credible guarantees to independent power producers, flexible licensing for renewable energy investors, accelerated investment in large-scale power projects, and an overhaul of our transmission networks. I think we all are having trouble with the excessive load shedding, and that's going to be a thing of the past when the citizens win Zimbabwe for change. We're also going to deliver a modern health plan where our budget meets the Abuja Declaration on Budgetary Allocations to Health, keeping our health workers at home through better pay, and harnessing the vast talent pool in the private and public sectors. We also have an education plan. As we all know, education is the bedrock of any successful nation. We will ensure that teachers are paid adequately and there's sufficient capital funding in schools, and we update our curriculum to make sure that it's fit for purpose. Our farmers will be voting for our agricultural policy, which rewards farmers for their hard work. It does not rob farmers through opaque programs that benefits the elite. The farmers will vote for title deeds to their land and better prices for their crops. We similarly have a mining policy that's going to ensure that we rectify all the anomalies that we currently see in the mining sector, which seems to be benefiting elites through gold smuggling, which is costing the fiscus $100 million US every single month. We're going to see an end to that. And we also have an anti-corruption plan to ensure that there's sincerity in the fight against corruption. Now, obviously, we note the last-minute attempts by ZANU-PF to throw trinkets at traditional leaders, our chiefs, at soldiers, at civil servants, but the citizens know how much they've been suffering over the past 5 years. And what we commit to as the CCC is restoration of our dignity collectively as Zimbabweans. And so I'll just end with a call to action for the citizens. As always, it's the courage of Zimbabweans that will carry all of us through. We applaud the heroic efforts and defiance of the citizens. We continue to call for the release of Honorable Job Sikala, who today has been detained for 275 days. And finally, we continue to encourage everybody to hop onto the 1+5 campaign. Ensure that all who are around you are registered to vote so that we win Zimbabwe for change. Without further ado, I'm going to defer proceedings to our Elections Directorate, who today are going to be represented by Ms. Ellen Shiriedenga, who's going to give us an update on the ongoing voter registration blitz.
Thank you so much, Champion Fazi. Good morning, everyone. Basically, I will speak to the current voter registration blitz. And I'm sure you are all aware that the process commenced on the 12th of March and is set to end on the 21st of March after 10 days. Our presentation here is to actually make observations and also make propose recommendations to ZEC with respect to the way forward. As you are aware, and also some of you that went through the ZEC delimitation report, ZEC indicated that there is a deficit of around 2.2 million Zimbabweans that are eligible to register to vote but are not on the voters' roll. And we are hoping, as the CCC, that this voter registration blitz will provide the opportunity for those Zimbabweans that are not on the voters' roll to be registered as voters. The background to this is, as we have constantly called for the voter registration centers to be accessible to the generality of the population. If you noted before the blitz, these registration centers were only in the 63 districts, of ZEC throughout the country, which in some instances, you know, where people were to travel, say, for example, Victoria Falls to Wange, which is the nearest center, someone had to travel about 100 kilometers to just get registered. And remember, we are talking about young people who do not have money. And surely they are not in a position to sacrifice $10, $20, $25, you know, to just go and register. So this opportunity of the Blitz has come in handy for such people. And we as the CCC, we have always been on point to say, as part of our electoral reforms, let the voter registration Blitz be mandatory before any general election. You go to the Electoral Act. The Blitz is up to the discretion of ZEC. It can come today and say, no, we are not conducting a Blitz. But yet there are people out there that will be disfranchised. So we are calling for the mandatory Blitz before any general election. With regards to our observation, let me hasten to say there's been a lot of enthusiasm amongst first-time voters. Some of you as journalists, we bumped into you as we were doing our monitoring, you could note that in some areas there were long queues of young people. Despite the challenges that I'm going to speak to, but some were determined. You know, there was a lot of zeal. There was a lot of excitement. Clearly, young people are determined to be the change agents for Zimbabwe. They are determined to take control of this country, and that can only be done through voter registration. So we are happy, and we continue to applaud those young people that have taken the heat from ZEC to go and register. And also, as we have the generality of citizens out there, you know, that have been all over, you know, encouraging these young people to go and register to vote. And we certainly applaud them for that effort. Let me go on to the challenges that I encountered. Firstly, there's the malalignment of the voter registration Blitz with the identity card issuance Blitz. I'm sure some of you noted that the Ministry of Home Affairs, they actually published a circular, I think it came out 2 or 3 days back, to say they are also conducting an ID issuance Blitz. Of course, that is one of our calls as the CCC to say, it's either the Home Affairs Department precedes ZEC to issue ID cards, and then people will come and register later. Or alternatively, we have some kind of a one-stop shop where people get issued with IDs. From there on, they just get they get the opportunity to register as voters. So this is what we have been calling for. We have noted the notification from the Ministry of Local Government, but however, we are saying it's not enough. We had hoped that ZEC was going to sit down with the local government, with the Minister of Local Affairs, Minister of Home Affairs, and come up with a calendar which would actually indicate some concurrence between the two institutions. But clearly, that was not done. The danger to this is we will go back to the same dilemma as in January 2022 and April 2022 when we had the first and second Blitz. We had a situation where ZEC just went ahead first and attempted to register people. Out of a target of 2 million, they only managed to register around 226,000, which was a meager to 8%. And if that problem between the two institutions is not addressed, then we risk having young people failing to register because they do not have identity card documentation. So this is our call to the Registrar General's office and to ZEC as well to say, sit down and synchronize your calendars. Where instances where people are not able to access the ID documentation, let's make arrangements to give those people the opportunity. Also, with regards to the challenges, the second issue is the BVR machines malfunctioning. we have had quite a number of those instances, to an extent that you know, you would have a situation like, for example, in Go to Central Ward 35, there was one machine in Mabugu Primary School, and that machine malfunctioned, and it only started to work at 3 p.m. Subsequently, ZEC was only able to register 7 people, because remember, the cutoff time for registration is 5 p.m. So there was a long queue for about 40 or 50 people that wanted to register but did not get that opportunity. They were told the ZEC registration, or the ZEC officers would move to a neighboring center within the ward, which was Mushayavanu registration center. So those 40 people, they went to Mushayavanu the following day. And guess what? The machine malfunctioned again. And only 3 people were registered. So that's the challenge that we're facing. It's not only in Gotu Central, it's throughout Zimbabwe. We had an incident also just across here in Batanai, in Mavuko, same story. So that's, and remember, that's a day lost. This is where we come in today to say, ZEC, can you please assist by compensating for the lost time? The other thing is the power issue. You know, of course, Champion Fadzi spoke about the power crisis in the country. And it's something that we ought to budget for. Put up the necessary infrastructure to ensure that, you know, there's adequate power for one to do whatever you're supposed to do. And in this case, to register voters. And we are seeing instances that in some areas, those solar systems, but because of weather conditions, and then they're not able to register voters. So, like for example, in Kwadzana 8 primary school, Gwinyai primary school, those are some of the examples of issue. And Mtasa, Nyanga, and Mutare. Remember also in Mutare, the part Manikaland, there's a second Fredu, that side. So the weather is kind of erratic. So that affects, you know, the solar systems. And at the end of the day, you know, the voter registration lead times will not wait for that. So this is one of our pleas to ZEC to say we've had power cuts. People fail to register to vote. Can you please consider those? Of course, there are issues where ZEC in some instances will run out of consumables, like the voter registration slips. So we noted that, but of course in some instances ZEC would rectify that. But remember, there's stoppage time there. So in time will be moving. And the primary concern, which we noted, and primarily in urban areas, is the slow pace of voter registration. You'll realize that in some instances, it will take a person 15 to 20 minutes to 25 minutes to be registered. And by 5 p.m., they could have closed. Literally meaning that, you know, some people would have to stick around for 3, 4, 5 hours by the voter registration center, only to be turned away last minute. So that is one other concern, to say there is need to actually speed up the process. And if needs be, increase the number of, you know, the BVR machines. And the sixth issue is the late starting. You know, in some areas, ZEC started late, and like the first day, they'll pitch the tents the same day when the voter registration process is supposed to start. So that's why there were challenges in terms of starting time. And it's like, for example, in Glenlon, ZEC started at 10 a.m., and that's 3 hours of lost time there. So yeah, that is one of the concerns that we noted. And of course, the seventh one is the inadequate BVR kits. I think I alluded to that earlier on. And the other issue, the eighth one, is the bad weather. You know, we had, like for example, in Chipinge, because of Cyclone Freddy, you know, the weather was terrible, nothing could happen, and the rivers are impassable. They are flooded. So literally, people cannot access those registration centers. So that is one other concern that we are bringing up to ZEC to say, because of the weather patterns, people are not able to access the registration centers. And there was another, concern that we noted, and it was actually surprising to us. We had instances where some registration officers were demanding proof of residence from the aspiring registrants. The Electoral Act speaks to an affidavit to say if one does not have proof of residence, then that person should be given an affidavit by ZEC, and ZEC officers, are commissioners of oath that can actually certify those affidavits. But then with instances where some of the registrants, potential registrants, were turned away because of the issue of proof of residence. So I'm sure that issue has been rectified, because we only heard about it on the first day, but after that we did not. Like, for example, in Mutasa Ward 6, that was one of the concerns that our people raised, and people were kind of worried about that. And the other issue is the voter transfers. I'm sure before the blitz, some of you noted just across by Cecil House there and Makombe, there was an influx of people, from where wanted to register to vote. And clearly some of you as journalists, you interviewed them. Some were coming as far as Goromonzi and were told, no, you need to go and register in Barede. They were given addresses. So we have a lot of, falsified or fraudulent, voter registration, voter transfers going on. And clearly that is ZANU-PF instigated. And as the CCC, we are definitely aware of that, because we know for a fact that ZANU-PF is targeting some of the wards here in Harare and in Lawayo, for example, Ward 1, which is the city center. And clearly, we have a situation where people are just buzzed, to go given false addresses to actually register in Ward 1, for example, in Bulawayo. And we just got a report that even, like the vendors, the ED for vendors, whatever, those people, they are given false addresses and made to register in Ward 1 in Bulawayo. We are aware of that. And Bari as well, we are aware of that. And this is one concern that we're raising is the CCC to say, there's need for ZEC to actually investigate this issue of, misrepresentation of addresses. And then the last issue is, there's this organization which they call FALS, Forever Associates of Zimbabwe. They are aligned to ZANU-PF. Their primary mandate is to profile the voters. Mm-hmm. It's so bad that we're getting reports, like they've been doing it in rural areas. Now they're doing it in urban as well. We have had reports even in Mavuku, mm-hmm. where these very same people were actually taking away voter registration slips of registrants that would have just been, people that would have just been registered. And that is illegal. So that is one issue that we are raising to say, that is tantamount to intimidation. And we are raising that concern as the CCC. And we will definitely bring it up with ZEC, and also, if needs be, with the law enforcement agents, because we have people that had their voter registration slips literally taken away from them by these very same people. Notwithstanding what they've been doing in rural areas, intimidating villagers, telling them to vote ZANU-PF, and threatening them with eviction in their respective, areas. So we are aware of that as the trip. And believe you me, no amount of intimidation will stop the tide of change. The people have had enough. You can intimidate them, you can take away the voter registration slip from them, but that will not stop them from going to the ballot box on election day and voting the party which they want to vote for. Be that as it may, let me speak to our recommendations or the remedy that we are seeking with respect to the challenges we raised. Firstly, is the extension of voter registration days in the areas that have been affected. As the CCC, we're in the process of compiling the list of those areas that are affected. For example, like earlier on, I spoke about, in Chipinge, because of Cyclone Freddy, there was no registration which took place, and the malfunctioning of BVR machines, like in Go-To Center, for example. So those are some of the examples that we cited, but we are still in the process of compiling the list of those affected areas, so that we'll try to engage ZEC and see if possible we can have an extension. And it just as well, one good thing about it, just yesterday ZEC issued a notice with regards to those technical challenges, which as the CCC, we definitely do appreciate that. And also the statement which ZEC said is that ZEC will ensure that every eligible citizen will be registered. So this is the premise where we are coming from as the CCC, to say, ZEC, please live up to your promise of ensuring that every eligible citizen will be registered, and we were approaching you to see if we can have a way of making sure that the disfranchised people get the opportunity to register as voters, as stated in Section 67 of our Constitution. And then the other thing is we would want to implore ZEC to actually extend the operating hours beyond 5 p.m. Particular, like on election day, our law is clearly says, say by 7 p.m. we are still in the queue. Then you can cast your vote as long as you are within the, the polling station. Let the same law apply to voter registration. As long as it's 5 p.m., but still in the registration center, we kindly request ZEC to actually ensure that the people that will be within the registration center will be given the opportunity to register, regardless if it's 5 p.m. Or not. So we've actually written to ZEC with that request, and we are yet to hear with their response. And of course, the third request is to ask ZEC to increase the number of BVR kits, particularly in areas where there is high demand. For example, we speak of Heathcliff and Epworth, because there are long queues, and you realize there's only one or two machines there, so which is pretty inadequate. So we implore ZEC to consider increasing the number of BVR machines. And of course, the issues of violence, I know it's not the prerogative of ZEC, but with respect to the law enforcement agents, I think there's a lot of intimidation going on. We kindly request the law enforcement agents to make sure that it deploys its personnel around the voter registration centers. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much to the Elections Directorate, represented today by Ms. Ellen Shirietenga. Thank you for that update on the voter registration blitz. Now, as is our custom, we're going to open the floor up to any questions you might have. As the media, as usual, may you please put up your hand, identify yourself in your news house, and then ask one question so that we can have as many as possible. So the floor is open. Yes, sir.
I am Kudzai from Technic TV. Recently, we went to Macombe on a fact-finding mission. We wanted to see how the registration is going. And we spoke to a couple of people, and they indicated that they've been forced much to go and register. Some of them indicated that their businesses had been shut down. You as a party, what are you going to do to ensure that such incidents do not continue to occur? Because these are people who will be working, and then their life will be disrupted by such incidents.
So obviously, for the avoidance of doubt, we don't coerce people. The people who support and follow the CCC do so on a voluntary basis. And President Chamisa just last week in his agenda statement says that while ZANU-PF plans to rig, we plan to win. We plan to win hearts and minds. So it's never our method is the CCC to coerce people
I
and close.
They indicated
So
that
it was ZANU-PF,
yes.
exactly. So we continue obviously to call upon ZANU-PF. You know, stop these dirty tactics. You don't close someone's stall down because they don't support you. You deliver on your mandate to the people. And if anything, it demonstrates beyond any doubt that ZANU-PF has lost support. By the time you have to grab someone by the collar and say, come and register to vote for me so that you can continue to sell your tomatoes, Pamsika, it means you've completely lost the battle already. And as the CCC, of course, we say no to violence. We say, obviously, those, the Constitution is quite clear around dignity and freedom. You can't force anyone. You can't compel someone to associate against their will. And we call upon the relevant state institutions to step in. There is a code of conduct for political parties, which ZEC is, at law responsible for ensuring that political parties comply with. That sort of conduct is obviously proscribed, it's forbidden, and we call upon ZEC to perform its mandate. We've got several institutions in terms of the Constitution that are supposed to step in to stop that sort of behavior. You've got your National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, you've got your Human Rights Commission. We're absolutely surprised and flabbergasted as the CCC that they're not doing their job. This is where they should step in. We shouldn't be seeing FAS at every registration center. We should be seeing the NPRC encouraging all citizens that, look, we're all Zimbabweans. At the end of the day, all we want, certainly as the CCC, is to see a better Zimbabwe. So these acts of coercion definitely must stop. And we say, as the CCC, that citizens must not be forced in this way. Do right by the people, and the people will support you. You don't want to govern by force. You want to govern because the citizens want you there. And so we obviously send a message to ZANU-PF that, look, we know you failed. We want elections, we don't want war, and we know that ZANU-PF can never win a free and fair election in Zimbabwe. Yes, sir.
Charlie from 216. You spoke of extension. Do you have any daily number of days that you wanted to extend?
Not at this stage, but we are saying focusing particularly on those affected areas. For example, you look at Gutu, they lost a day. So we expect that particular ward or that registration center to have another day where they are able to register their people.
And just in addition to that, I think the Constitution and the electoral law are quite clear that voter registration is an ongoing process. Yes. I think we've made it clear ever since we started our Election Watch updates that ZEC should actually be having accessible voter registration centers at all times. It shouldn't be the case that you have to move to another town in order to register to vote, and sometimes people have to walk 10, 20, 30 kilometers. That should never be the case. And you've got a number of centers, even within Harare, where people in an entire constituency don't have adequate centers, and also to ensure that they're accessible. So certainly as a matter of law, they're entitled to continue registering people until proclamation. Why don't they do that? They've been given funding. We don't see, why their obligation in terms of, I think it's section 155 or 6 of the Constitution, they've got a duty, a constitutional obligation to have ongoing voter registration, and they should be true to that. The right to vote that Ms. Shiriyedinga spoke to, enshrined in Section 67, must be fully facilitated by ZEC, and so we call upon them to do that. It's not normal, it's a scandal to have over 2 million eligible voters. This is not counting those in the diaspora, not on the voters' roll. They should do everything within their power to ensure that those people get onto the voters' roll. Yes, are there any women journalists who want to ask a question? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Lucy Yassin. My name is Lucy Yassin. I'm a freelance journalist.
Yes.
Ms. Ellen Shiriyedinga made reference to the intimidation that has been perpetrated to aspiring registered and having their registration slips taken from them. Number one, I would like to know what is the party doing to address that. You know the perpetrators, you know the individuals that have their slips taken. And then number two, is there any education that you're giving to the voters, regardless of their party affiliation, to understand that that slip is theirs?
Thank you very much, Ms. Asini. I'm going to defer to Ms. Shiriyedinga, but just before I do, for the avoidance of doubt, the obligation at law to maintain security of person, of property, is with the police. And we've consistently made reports to the police when these incidents have arisen. We've even reported to ZEC because they've got the obligation in terms of the code of conduct to make sure that's done. So we actually have voter registration monitors and peace monitors at every single registration center in Zimbabwe, trying to protect these people. But obviously we have no right to stop violence when it takes place. You even saw reports of ZEC officials being beaten up by ZANU-PF members. So all of that is the responsibility of the police. We're surprised when the police don't quickly step in with the same speed and alacrity we see when they, see Honorable Chibaya having a meeting in Budiriro. We want to see that same energy by the police to make sure that voters are protected, prospective voters. And when it comes to education, as the CCC, we are going door to door in every village, on every street, educating citizens about their rights. We have said time and again, your vote is your secret. Nobody has got the power to force you to go anywhere, to force you to vote. So that voter education campaign is ongoing. And in addition to that, in our voter registration drive, we don't discriminate. Even if we see a bus of ZANU-PF, we give them the flyers, telling them where the centers are. We want every citizen to be on that voters' roll. We're not just campaigning to CCC members. President Chamisa said in his agenda address that ours is a citizen campaign. Every single person, regardless of your political party, we're going to fight for every single vote. So we've actually, gone beyond just our traditional structures and strongholds and those who are perceived to be CCC. We're going to everybody, and we continue to call upon everybody. Doesn't matter where you are, if you're a soldier, if you're a teacher, a civil servant, even if you're a minister and you're sick and tired of the rot, the poverty and injustice and corruption, we call upon you, register to vote so that your voice is heard.
Okay, thank you. Now, Tim Pending is in the Veland. I think champion Fatu sekhulumile ukuthi into lezi zenzakala umuntu ephuma ku polling station and kwezinye indawo amapolisa abekhona. So kuhle ukukhulunywe ekubike amapholisa ukuthi into le yenzakele, but siyazi ukuthi abafana laba abefazi bayethusela. And lathi kunje so ngesigaba sila lokho esingathi ngama peace monitors. Abantu abancedisa ukubona ukuthi kulokuthula esigabeni ngoba sinanzelela ukuthi njengebandla kulabantu bethu abanengi abayethuselwayo. So laba abantu umsebenzi wabo ngokubona ukuthi kulokuthula. And njalo sikhuluma njalo thina njengebandla we made sure ukuthi MP lo councillor lama citizens ethu bonke abantu sibanike umlando ukuthi beguduze abantu ezindlini zabo ukuthi bebamobilize ukuthi beregister ukuvota. So ngabanye abantu bona laba ababebona umumo esigabeni ngaso kulokwethusela iba abantu abazathi lo muntu uyethusele bemnike ivoter education ngoba umuntu nxa mobilizer umuntu obviously uyamnika ivoter education uyamtshela ngamalungelo akhe okuvota uyamtshela ukuthi lokho okumele kwenziwe kuye kumbe ongamelanga yikuphi. So ngomunye umlando esiunike abantu bethu ama citizens ethu abangena esigabeni ukuthi befundise abantu benze ivoter education endabeni ezinjalo. Ngiyabonga.
Thank you. Yes sir.
I don't think it was my reports I got to go more and to have to put it up with some of in Utra to that piece of spectating
right, when President Nelson Chamisa Vakataura, I think last week per agenda Pavakapa, Guarare, Gorerino 2023, kuti hapana munhu anotaura iye kuti ndikuda kumira vanhu ndovanofanira kutoti chi tikukuda iwe kuti miririre. Saka isusu tinoshamisika zvakare neve-elections directorate kana tichinzwa kunzi vanhu vakarwa. Isusu candidate selection yedu takati vanhu ndovachasarudza kuti vachamiririrwa nani. Saka, it's not a question yekuti munhu anotaura kuti inini ndikuda kumirira kwakati ndikuda kumirira kwakati vanhu votorwa. That is not the CCC way, and we condemn that. That is something that will be dealt with internally, but we have no space for that. Hatisi kuda bongozozo, hatisi kuda vanhu vanonetsana panyaya candidate selection. Kana usiri kudiwa nevanhu hausi kuzopinda. Munhu ari kudiwa nevanhu ndiye achapinda. Hatisi kuda imposition yema-candidates, hakuna imposition ichaitika. Hapana munhu whether anozviimposa kana kuti anoimpozwa nevanhu. Vanhu hatisi kuita zvekumanikidzira this time. We want to have a transparent community candidate selection template. Uye template iyoyo haisati yatombopublicizwa. Saka isi tinotoshamisika kana kuti munhu akuti ndiri aspiring. Uri aspiring kupi in terms of which rules? Marules acho haasati abuda. Mirirai munhu wese, and it's open to all citizens. The process is open to all citizens to stand. Saka President Chamisa said this is not a party project, it's a movement, citizen project, a citizen movement project. Saka hapana kuti aiwa indiri fadzi, ndiri we-CCC ndinshan, hakuna zvakadaro bhoreri. Munhu wese is going to be subjected to that process. Munhu wese achatomirira kuti kuzonzwa. There's going to be an independent body. I think tichazopakurirwa mazuva kutera kuti zvichafamba sei, but vanhu ngavamire. Musarwepa chenyu, there's no point, because you might not even come palist yemanominees. Saka hapana munhu angatonzi aspiring ari kuda. Munhu anoita izvozvo, munhu anenge atobuda mugwara redu re-citizens movement, and they're not part of us. They can't be part of us if they're behaving that way. And obviously the law enforcement agents must always deal with violence. We have no room for violence under the CCC. Yes.
Yeah, given all the
just come here so that we can all hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So given all the challenges that you are facing with the are you ready? Are you ready for the election? Given all the challenges that you are facing and all these glitches.
So, without a doubt, we have said, I think since the CCC was announced on the 24th of January 2022, that we've been preparing for this election from day one. A boycott is out of the question. Where there are issues and glitches and administrative challenges, it's up to ZEC to ensure that it complies with the Constitution, and we're going to mount serious pressure upon them to do that. We've got an electoral reform agenda which is being championed currently by our members of parliament. It's a fallacy that the CCC doesn't want reforms. In fact, since the beginning, since the 2018 election, President Nelson Chamisa has been clear that we need reforms. You recall under the old MDC alliance, there was the reload document. When we became the CCC, we're the only there was Price under the MDC alliance. But then when the new movement was formed on the 24th of January, he was very clear in the 2022 agenda that we've got a reform agenda. We're the only political party that's been talking about reforms. We're the only political party that managed to put pressure on ZEC to ensure that they run things like this voter registration blitz. We're the only political party that's been pushing for reform to the Electoral Act. And so we continue to push for those reforms. But guess what? Elections are like Christmas. You don't say, no, I'm certain Christmas, Christmas is going to come regardless. The Constitution says elections have to happen every 5 years. So it's incumbent upon all citizens, we have to get ready. As the CCC, we're sharpening our tools. We said that the by-elections will be our dry run. We're ensuring that we defend the vote. We've got polling agents, and we do everything on our part to ensure that we're ready. But what's out of the question is postponing, deferring the election. I mean, that sort of mantra is done by people who are anti-constitution, anti-democracy, and anti the will of the people. You can't be scared of the voice of the people if you're a true Democrat. I hope that answers. Yes, I think we'll take one more. Yes, Sam.
Speaking of the electoral process, there's a presentation that was made last week. Actually, somebody was just sharing at an event, and this person has been an election agent, a chief elections agent, and he was narrating the role, he was speaking about the role of the military, how they were treated during the 2008 election and 2018 election. And you're saying you're still going to the election when there is this glaring evidence that the military is always involved and has a say in announcing themselves.
So obviously we call for a demilitarized process, and I think the CCC has been the only voice that's called for reform to ZEC. We've called for a reform to the ZEC Secretariat. In fact, we forced the admission on the part of ZEC to say the percentage of military or ex-military personnel that they had. That's obviously something that's unconstitutional. Anything that stands in the way of a free and fair election should not be tolerated, and it's incumbent upon those state institutions to comply with the Constitution. The Constitution is supreme. It has to be done. When we say we're ready, I mean, it's not the responsibility of the CCC to run elections. It's the responsibility of the CCC to mobilize citizens, to energize the base, to ensure that we've got candidates that are selected by the people, ethical, competent leaders. It's our responsibility in getting ready to ensure that we've got an alternative policy plan. And where it comes to our prerogative as the CCC, we are ready. Of course, there must be reform in this country across all sectors, but particularly in terms of the elections. And the state institutions who've got the constitutional mandate for that, those are the people to whom the question should be directed. Are you ready? If you're not ready, what are you doing to ensure that you're ready? You don't have a choice in the matter. Nobody has the right to take away the citizens' right to vote. It's constitutionally enshrined. So even if the CCC were to say today we're not ready, we are, that does not stop, or that cannot stand in the way of the right of citizens to vote. ZEC can't take away the right to vote. ZANU-PF can't take away the right to vote. No person, no institution has got that sort of power. And so we continue to say to every institution, whether it's to ZEC, the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission, Parliament, everybody must be ready for this upcoming election. Everybody must ensure that they do what's required to be done so that we have a constitutional election that's free and fair, so that for once we've got a government that's voted in for the people, a government that puts the needs of the people first, a government that doesn't invest only in cars, but that invests in ambulances, a government that pays money to ensure that health workers have what they need to deliver healthcare, a government that ensures that education is taken care of, a government that cares about whether or not the masses eat, not a government where only just a few people are looting gold. That's what we're fighting for, and we know that it's the cycle of disputed elections that continues to see Zimbabwe in the crisis that we're in now. We're causing problems even beyond our borders. We're creating a whole migration crisis in South Africa, in other countries. That should not happen. It's not normal, as President Chamisa has said, to have 5 million of your citizens running away because they're hungry, running away because they can't get power, running away from potholes, running away from getting beaten by the police. You can't have that in a constitutional democracy. And we are sick and tired of Zimbabwe being the sick man of Africa. We need to restore our status as the jewel of Africa, and that's something that's going to be discussed at great length in our new Great Zimbabwe Blueprint. The restoration agenda is key to a better Zimbabwe. So, on that note, let's continue to register to vote. Let's ensure that we also, if we already registered, add 5 more people to the voters' roll so that we win the nation for change. Thank you.